Nobody can employ me. I've been self-employed now for a few years. What the fuck am I going to do? And I came back and we'd done a pilot for the BBC like 3 years before. And they called up and said, we want to do the show with you.
Fashion icon turned beauty entrepreneur.
She's now built one of the most successful brands on the planet.
The queen of all things fashion and beauty.
Founder and CEO of Trinny London, Trinny Woodall.
From the idea inside your head to the idea on the table is the hardest part. You have to face the reality, warts and all, of how difficult that's going to be, that journey, and are you prepared to have the courage to take it? I'm 50 now. I've had a successful career, but I haven't reached where I want to get to. I also knew that I could not do it, because I couldn't look at myself 10 years later and think, you never tried.
Before we dive in, I want to extend a warm invitation to join our thriving Foundr community. It's the perfect place to discover more insightful interviews aimed at helping you build, grow, and scale your business. So don't forget to hit subscribe. Your support means the absolute world to us. Thank you so much for subscribing. Let's get stuck into today's discussion.
Hear the stories, learn the proven methods, and accelerate your growth and future through entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Foundr Podcast with Nathan Chan.
So the first question that I ask everyone that comes on is, how did you get your job? AKA, how did you find yourself doing the work you're doing today?
It's a really long one. So I'm just going to kind of say, I think careers go in cycles, all right? And up to the age of 25, I worked for other people. And from 25 on, I kind of did. So up to the time, actually 26, I'd say. Up to that time, I was so all over the shop, no idea what I wanted to do. Kind of want to follow my dad, who was in finance, but didn't go to university, no qualifications, really shitty at school. So I went and I became a secretary, which is what my careers advisor said I would be good at, for a commodities physical trading house. So I thought I'll learn that way. You know, I think that movie with Eddie Murphy had come out about, you know, the kind of trading something. So I did that for a few years, and then I worked in a trading floor, and I was one girl and 67 guys selling Anglo-American funds. Had no idea what I was doing. I'd go on the subway every morning and I would have the Financial Times, like the, you know, AFT or whatever it's called, and then the Daily Mail inside. And that was me. Classic. You know, I'm going to be tapped on the shoulder and somebody's going to say, you so can't do this. And luckily for me, I kind of thought, I know I can't do this. And I took a few months out. And then I thought, what do I actually really love doing? And I love making over girls. So that was like my first foray into it. And I did a column, I did books, I did TV. And that was a kind of cycle for about 15 years. And then no longer Flavor of the Month. But in that, I learned a lot. And then I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I tried it the very beginning of online in 99. Raised money really quickly for the .com boom and bust. Lost it all, had to make it to be redundant. Really tough. Learned so much around what went wrong there to then start Trinny London in 2013. So cycles, 3 cycles in my life.
So I'd love to just go back before we get on to Trinny London, because you've had incredible success there. Let's talk about the early touch points of entrepreneurship. You said that you started a company just before the .com boom. Did you do anything before that, or that was your first business?
Sock it to you. Age 17. No, Bose Unlimited was age 16. So Princess Diana's around, everyone's loving hair bows. And so I go and get this fabric and I go to Portobello Market in London and I get little jewels and I put them on the back and I walk the streets and sell them to kind of 2 cool stores, Harvey Nichols and one called Scott Crowley. It was like the coolest men's store. Loved it. And then the girlfriend I did it with from school then wanted to go and study art, and so it stopped. I would always find those hair bows somewhere in a garage in a home I was living in. 3 years later, sock it to you. My next idea was, I was 19, maybe 20, and there were all these trading floors. And I thought, let me, sell socks. What do men lose? They lose socks all the time. They put 2 in the washing machine and 1 comes out. So this is like so not this world today. I got the prettiest girls in the shortest mini skirts who went around the trading floors, and my God, did they sell socks? Because like these guys are just so kind of, oh my God, who are these wonderful women walking through it. So we sold, the first few weeks, we sold unbelievable amounts of socks. I ordered many more from this company called Barter, sort of Eastern European sock company, a bit dodge, and sold socks. And then kind of after a few weeks, I had a few calls from a few friends of mine. They were saying, these socks, the elastic goes, they ran in the washing machine, you know, this kind of. So that lasted like 6 months. But my God, those boxes of socks I found for the next 10 years. So those are my first two early attempts.
And then you started that company, what was it called? Sorry, just around .com.
So I had Ready To, which I'd already been working in journalism. I did a column in a newspaper in the Telegraph for 7 years. And it was 98. Online had no e-com, but I had got a sense that it would be this destination where you could get a global audience and you could talk to them. And at that time, I had 2 million people who read our newspaper column, but I thought, how amazing that you give this advice globally. That's what it meant to me at that time. So I wrote a one-pager on it. We went to see Cable and Wireless, who are now defunct, but they did e-com. They were the first people to do e-com. So I went to see this woman, Jill Street. I will never forget her name. And she said at the end of the chat, how much money do you need? And I had no idea. I'd never pitched a business before. So I said, £500,000. And I remember Susanna, my partner, literally went, sorry, kicked me under the table. Okay. And she said, and so Jill said, let me think about it. And so we left. Susanna went, you crazy, whatever. But I think she's always been more conservative in our relationship in that regard. So then 2 weeks later, we get an email from Jill saying, I think that was the wrong amount of money. I think you need £675,000. So it came to our bank account the following week. I thought, oh my God, now I got to build this company. And Susanna was very involved in it, but she was also pregnant and having a baby. So I felt at the time, I didn't know marketing. I didn't know how to run a company. I knew about the idea and I knew about women. So I hired in a CEO from a bank. I had a CMO, top of her game, who then came to cruise at our company. I had Carla, tech, because we were doing Perl coding, hard coding. So you need 20 people to hard code a database where you're going to give personalization. And we were looking at doing personalization. And I had this image that if I could get people to come on and say, this is me, this is my body shape, they could move this thing. And I'd gone to see the person at the time who was doing the most innovative tech in that regard was sexclub.co.uk. Because they did this kind of come into the world of the sex casino. And they were doing gaming online and they were doing this kind of immersive experiences. It was really early for immersive experiences. So I went to look at how they did that tech and I hired 2 of their coders. And I thought, let's do that. So then we'd do this body shape and you could pull it apart. And then there was the kind of offline manual element because there was not that integration at the time. So we photographed 6,000 pieces of clothing. And we put them on the website and you could say, this is my body shape. This is the size of my boobs. This is how tall I am. I want a red dress for £60. And we'd give it to you. But you had to go and buy it in store. So how was I going to make the money? So there was at that time, those kind of coupon things you could do. But that was that's not really going to monetize. So I felt we're going to have a lot of data. And women actually had to they gave us about 220 bits of information on themselves. So I thought that data will have value. So let's go and talk to people like Procter & Gamble and stuff and say, we can translate this data to understand your consumer. Instead of you're doing a competition to understand your consumer, which is not objective, we can give you objective consumer about data about your consumer. But by this stage, I had 60 people. That road was going to take a long time. And then .com bust. And I had to close the business a year later. So the business went for 2 years. And that was probably one of the lowest points in my life, because when you have to close a business and you make sure everyone gets the right redundancy, because I loved these people who'd started working in the business. And then I went off to Arizona. I went to a retreat and I went to talk to the cacti in the desert, as one does. And I'm walking down the cacti path and I'm thinking, nobody can employ me. I've been self-employed now for a few years. What the fuck am I going to do? And I came back and we'd done a pilot for the BBC 3 years before. And they called up and said, we want to do the show with you. So, you let go of stuff and things come back. You never know where they come from. So then we did TV.
Oh, that was that season.
That was that season.
Yeah, got you. So, you worked on What Not to Wear for close to 20 years. What lessons did you learn that you took from that to Trinny London?
So many. I learned about women. So I learned about women in the UK first. I learned about what made them feel they hit a brick wall, what times in their life. So, you're sort of kind of the star at university, and then you go to your first job and you think, I'm feeling a bit insecure. Or you go off and you think, I'm going to leave my career and have a baby, and then you feel left behind. Or you feel, I'm letting go of my work. Where's my identity? Or you meet somebody and then you divorce them and you think, I need to start over. I need to have sex again. I need to feel confident again. I need to feel sexy again. Then you could just go into menopause. This is like way down the line for your, not you personally, but actually men have andropause, which I can talk to you about later if you want to know. But so there's these basic life stages where we need to reset a bit and just think, who do we want to be? So I knew what they were in England, and I'd done it with women in England, but it was when I went to lots of other countries. So when What Not to Wear finished, I took another show called The Mission Show to Australia, to Israel, to Poland, to India, to America, to Scandinavia, bits of Europe. So different religions, different skin tones, different ages, exactly the same feelings. And all the time in that, the thing women first noticed in a makeover was their makeup. Because many people have a body dysmorphia to some greater or lesser degree. They have that uncomfortableness to look at themselves in a makeover and just come to terms with their body. But their face, yes, because you're going to do something that's going to definitely be a move on. And they're going to go, wow, I feel better. I feel I look nice. I feel I can look at myself. And that made me think, that's what I got to start with.
Talk to me about 2017, you had this idea for Trinny London. How long was it in development for? Because you launched in 2017.
Yeah, so 2012. So I was already carrying around stackable stuff that I put together, that I smudged together in my bathroom, that I kind of mixed formulations in my bathroom together. But when you're an entrepreneur, from the idea inside your head to the idea on the table is the hardest part, because when it's inside your head, you preserve its lack of failure. You also stop to see its lack of success, but you can imagine what it would be. So many people live in that world inside their head. And as soon as you get it out on the kitchen table, you have to face the reality, warts and all, of how difficult that's going to be, that journey. And are you prepared to have the courage to take it? Because to be an entrepreneur, you have to have passion, dedication, courage, and such resilience. And I had to be ready for that. So, when I turned 50, which is when this all happened, it was kind of the worst time in my life to do it. I had a house that I had earned very big salaries on to buy, but the mortgage was huge. I couldn't afford it. My personal circumstances were difficult as well in terms of some things that had happened. And I also knew that I could not do it, because I couldn't look at myself 10 years later and think, you never tried. And it was getting I'm not a 20-year-old entrepreneur doing Bose Unlimited or doing Ready To. It's I'm 50 now. I've had a successful career, but I haven't reached where I want to get to. So I still had that thing. I'm not really doing yet what I really, really, really want to do. I love making over the women, but I really want to grow a business.
Yeah, wow. So it didn't feel like it was enough. All the success you had in TV and you want more.
I wanted something different. More maybe is wrong, because it sounds like it's greedy. I just wanted, when you make people over, you do them singularly and you see the impact. And I think the drug of what I do is to see how you can leave a woman feeling better about herself. And then I thought to myself, if you have a product and a business and you're online, you can do that globally. At the moment, I do that in each country I am in, where that TV show is aired. It's small. What if I can do it to millions of people?
Yeah, okay. So you had this idea in 2012. You were kind of playing around. How long did it take to get your first batch of products ready, and what did you launch with?
Well, for me, I couldn't fund it myself. I kind of to me to do R&D and to do the, prototyping of our tooling took money. So I went, and in England, there's something called an SEIS scheme, which is a entrepreneur's investment scheme, which means you can find high net worth people and they will lose only 50%. They can invest and lose, get 50% of their tax back. It's a really great scheme.
Interesting.
Which I don't know if you have here in Australia.
No, we don't.
Because it really helps young entrepreneurs. So I raised £150,000. And with that, I did the tooling and I did the product development.
Yeah.
But then I ran out of money. And by that stage, I had a few people who were in the business. And so then I thought, okay, do you know Gary Vee?
Of course.
So I always follow Gary Vee. When he had literally 40,000 followers, and Gary always says, what the fuck can you sell in your house? You know, go and sell the sneakers on eBay. Don't think don't think it's going to come to you.
So you've
got to go and get it.
You were thrifty.
Thrifty. So I got all the clothes. I opened my doors, and I was sort of slightly in the public eye. So I didn't give a shit. I opened my doors and I said, come in and buy the clothes. And I had amassed 20 years of clothes from every fashion house because I worked in fashion. So I did £60,000. It's like $120,000.
Yeah.
So I had another year of being able to have money until I got to a stage where I went to VCs and got proper investment.
So you launched in 2017. When did you have to get proper investment from VCs? Is that pre-launch?
Yeah, pre-launch.
Yep,
so
okay.
we did a pre-launch round. Yeah. And so we were pre-rev and we had to kind of prove why we were going to do the valuation at 10 million, which is my first valuation. And that was a huge challenge. And I didn't know actually to what extent the challenge would be. And anyone who's gone to VCs for money has VC war stories. But there's female founder VC war stories, which are slightly more interesting because 2% of investment into businesses is into female founder-led businesses. Last year in the FT, they did something. And I'm just like, there's the only difference, which is more male skewed, is coal mining. Okay, just to give you a perspective here. So as a female founder, when you go in and you pitch, there are a few things. They're going to ask you questions, which is how are you going to protect your downside?
Yep.
And they will ask generally a man, how are you going to maximize your upside? So different kinds of questions. I had a few questions from some Silicon Valley investors, like they'd sort of chat to me 5 minutes, then they go, how old are you? And I go, I'm 51. And they'll go, okay. 5 minutes later, we were out the interview. So there were other people who would say, I love your tech. I love the personalization. I love this match to me idea where you're going to find out what people suit. But can you just do that in a third-party environment, third-party shop? And then you can just sell that makeup in a department store. And I'm like, what you don't get is I'm going after a woman who predominantly is not used to shopping online for makeup. Only 20% of her cohorts did. And I want to bring her to feel comfortable online to shop. I want to take away her paradox of choice. And to do that, I need this combination. But it took me 28 meetings to find somebody who got what I liked and did.
And so how much you raise?
I raised 2.2 the first round. And then I did a further round. And so in total, I raised 7.9. But I've done 7.9 to get to 50 million rev, which is quite a low raise to get to 50 million rev.
Yeah.
We're not blitzkrieging here like Casper mattresses. We're actually wanting those cohorts to be quite strong. We want customer retention to be quite high. And I think the time in which I was raising money, it was all about customer, acquisition. It is our North Star metric still, but retention is equally there. And I think we spoke about retention a bit earlier because I felt I want to build my business on bricks, not on sand. And we've seen a lot of dot-coms now who just, there wasn't the ability for them to get to market and have a positive EBITDA in any shape or form for the next 5 years.
Ton of questions here we got to unpack. So now we're getting to the real nitty gritty. So talk to me about the launch. What was your MOQ? How much stock did you have? And what happened with the launch? How'd you launch? Talk to me about that.
So I'm doing online. I've got a small following on Instagram. It was about 100,000, 120,000 at this stage. And I had done for the business plan that I had said that 3% of my followers would purchase in the first year. Okay. And I did, that was all I had to base it on. I was not the guy doing the pie in the sky. We'll get to here. I was thinking, let me do something that really to me is achievable, that I feel will happen. And I think I said 3 to 5%. So we launched with 49 SKUs. We did SKUs that are quite multifunctional. So everything snaps together in our makeup and the colors can go on lips and cheeks. And then, things work well together. And I had no idea which would be a bestseller, but I had 2 products that I had taken forever to develop. One called BFF, another one which launched a tiny bit later called Miracle Blur. And those ones are actually our bestsellers. We sell them every 30 seconds. So they really sell well. But at the time, you look and you think, I don't quite know, but I feel this is more innovative. So I'm going to put more SKUs behind it. But our SKUs at the time, we wanted to get SKUs of 2,000 because we only had a certain budget. And the labs we went to were saying the SKU is 5,000. So we then got the SKU to 3,000. So most of my first SKUs were 3,000 units each.
You had 42, 45?
49.
49 different SKUs. Why so many?
One makeup, darling. So with makeup, you've got foundation, concealer things, that's 12. You've got this cream which turns the colour of your skin, which is 6. You've got 12 eye shades. You've got 6 type of a lipstick. You've got 8 type of a lip cheek. You've got 8 type of a lip glow. And you've got 8 type of a lip luxe. It comes to 49.
Yeah, wow. So what would your advice be to someone looking to get up into the makeup industry then? Is it to raise money? Can you start a successful makeup brand without raising money?
I think you need to bootstrap as much as you can at the beginning. I really do think you do, because a lot of companies I see who get funded then kind of spend the money erratically. And I think if you bootstrap, the longer you bootstrap, the more you really understand where you need that expertise. Where do you not have that expertise? At the very beginning, it was me. It was what is now my COO, who came with an accountancy background. It was 2 interns and a makeup artist. And then our next person was another assistant. And then there was, we were 12 around a table. And then by the time we got funding, we were about 24 people. So you slowly begin to think, who do I really need now? And at the very beginning, we couldn't afford to get heads of department, but I also didn't want heads of department, because when your business is a certain size, you want to kind of be so understanding to infuse the vision you have for that business amongst a team. And then as you grow and you know that your expertise is not enough, you want that person to come in who will say, I will do your paid acquisition and I've done it for 10 years. Boom. And you think, great, fly with that. I know how to do tech. We now have a tech team of 46 people. We have a data team of 12 people. So, data, we have ERP backend systems that now do local warehouse distribution. Experts are required for these kind of things. At the very beginning, it was very different. I was employing people who were smart. They come out of university. They were in their first job. They just had something which was passionate and hardworking. And many of those people today now run their own division.
At what point in time, how fast did you know you were onto something? It was going to work.
It's interesting that slower than not slower than I imagined, but it's sort of, we got traction. So when you had, we decided from day one that we would ship to Australia, because I knew how I felt when brands launched in America and we were the second-class citizens.
Yeah, like Glossier.
Yeah, like Glossier. So I just wanted to launch simultaneously in Australia. So I think at the beginning, we had this very loyal customer base, because 2 days later after the launch, an Australian saying, I got my order. And it gave us this amazing fan base, customer base, follower in Australia, which now, is why we're here as our second biggest market. And that was that investment at the beginning. But that growth is slow because you're getting to a few people. You're not then doing paid marketing. We were doing all organic and PR. And then you get to a point where you know that you can start to do paid, and it will actually have, you realize there is traction in the market for your name. And only when you feel that traction is there should you really get paid. Otherwise, you're putting money down the toilet.
Somebody that was starting a new brand tomorrow in the e-com space, you would recommend to start with organic and PR before even touching paid, from your experience?
I would. First of all, Facebook changed the algorithm. iOS has changed. Cookies have changed. So the whole ability to have that, whether you do it on a ROAS or whether you do it on an eyeball, and I think you got to do it on a ROAS to begin with, right? But we have so many people just throwing money at advertising and they're wondering why there's no traction. And it's just that classic. It's not necessarily also the influencer market's become more sophisticated too. When we started, the ability to work with influencers who we were helping them and they were helping us feeling. And now influencers, it's a professional business. We respect influencers. So it's a different kind of monetary gain. So you need a budget for that too. It's not like you can say, well, paid is this expensive, let me do influencers. But you can find people. I have a few people who I mentor in new businesses. So somebody came up to me and said, look, I don't have the budget for what I do, but it's a brilliant idea that she has. And so I said to her, there's a few people who love it's a kind of food. Okay. They love it. And So why don't you go and pitch them and say, look, I can't afford to pay you as an influencer, but I will give you 2% of the business. And I would love that in a year you do 10 posts, you know, and it's like you might get the same as if you had an investment of £500,000 in terms of what you can get from 10 key people who also are getting pitched by everyone of, you know, we'll do an affiliate link or I'll pay you 20 grand. But it's very different for somebody to say, I'll give you a percentage of my business. Then they're like, hey, I can make money when I sleep. Concept of making money when you sleep is very different when you're a performer. So it's just, how can you think more cleverly than just thinking, I'll do an Instagram ad?
Hey guys, I really hope you're feeling inspired from today's interview. The truth is, there's never been a better time to build an e-commerce business. And the best part is, you don't need to do it alone. That's where Foundr Plus comes in, which I'm really excited to share with you. If you are feeling stuck in your e-commerce business, lacking the confidence to really move forward, or you're worrying about making costly mistakes or how to drive your sales, Foundr Plus is here to support you. You get access to a customized learning pathway with proven frameworks from successful e-commerce founders for fast results, a supportive community. We have weekly live mentorship and workshops and exclusive savings on startup tools and 24/7 real human support. You can try Foundr Plus today for just $1 for 7 days so you can accelerate your business goals. Just visit foundr.com/start $trial or click the link in the description to claim your trial. All right, now let's jump back into the show. Interesting. So I'd love to talk about Match to Me. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about the considerations that you had, you know, launching that as part of this D2C experience.
Personalization online, I'm fascinated by. I mean, since 1999, I've been working on it. But I think personalization online, especially if you're in a consumer space, which is you want it to be an emotive experience, can be the most unemotional thing. You know, people think that's great. It just asks these questions and spits out the return of what you suit. But it can be very unengaging. So you need to make it personable, especially in the space I'm in, which is beauty and predominantly female. So when we started, it was a very mechanical thing. I had like 500 women in my bathroom. We put all the different makeup on them. We saw what they suited. We got some patterns, you know, and in makeup to date, at that stage, you have people who would there was a brand that did things like saying, if you have blue eyes, these are your eye shades. But nobody had said, hey, you've got a brown hair, you've got a slightly, I call you sallow olive like me, oddly. You've got a cool brown eye, so you're neutral, all right? And you will then have this palette that suits you. And to define makeup by that hadn't been done before anyway. But it's a very simple, easy thing. And I've always been interested in defining what colors suit you, whether it's on your clothes. I did a book on it, which sold like 600,000 copies. And I know people are interested in it. So how could I then take that and make it an algorithm? And we use the word algorithm so loosely nowadays. But how could I put that in a database, put some attribution against it, and make it, you know, decide how many variables there are. So there are 3,600 variables of skin, hair, and eye. And we had 49 SKUs to begin with. So you wanted everyone to feel they had a unique set of what colors suit them, but many are getting the same if it's their skin color, but on colors that suit their lips and things, it's different. So you then, from that thing on the wall where I've put it all in, we then do an allocation. So when we're building the back end of the database, we look and we say there's kind of, you know, a color in a pot is cool, neutral, warm, or warm. That's its allocation. And then we look at your skin, hair, and eye, and we give you an overview label. And then you match back end those overview labels, and then you give rules, and then you give exceptions. So you layer the rules and exceptions on top of the database until you get to this algorithm that's going to give you your return. And that's how you do it.
Yeah, it's crazy just hearing you talk about this. I'm curious, like, doing anything technology, not coming from a technology background, is very, very difficult. Mm-hmm. Did you have a technical co-founder or somebody technical to help you build that Match to Me piece?
Yes. I mean, at the beginning, for me, doing the rules of Match to Me was complicated because it was myself, it was a makeup artist, it was one of our initial CTOs, and it was about what attributes are we going to make? So it was many people in a room, but it was probably looking at what's cool, what's neutral, what's warm, was that we had to get to that. And so there was an education from me to the tech team to understand that side of it. And then there's an education for the tech team for me to understand, when you put a rule in and a variant, which one precedes the other, and to understand that. So when I'm thinking of things, I need to understand how they're going to write the code. So it's kind of a learning curve for me. I don't want to sit and live in tech every day, but I have to understand a proportion of it to know how it will work.
Was there times when you thought that this was too tough? Because
there's days when it's such a fuck, and you're just, and also the techies and you're in the room and thinking, how are we going to, do this? But I find that a brilliant challenge. I love it. It's kind of, there's certain things in the business that stimulate me the most. So, when I was looking at what should the journey of a customer be, every consumer-facing D2C website is like, what is that journey? What should it be? Is it a journey of quick execution? Is it a journey of lingering for a purpose? Is it a journey of discovery and purchase and out? How are you going to bring them back? How are you going to make it easy to bring them back? Those customer journeys to me are things that every day when I look at the website, I just think, should we be doing this or should we change that? And now we have, we just introduced Snowplow. Snowplow is a great new bolt-on. And Snowplow, do you know Snowplow? Okay, Snowplow has the ability, since iOS has screwed us over, and Facebook hasn't, we don't know where everyone comes from. But Snowplow allows you to know where everyone has come from onto your website. So you then track them from where they come from. So I know they've come from Facebook ad, and I know they've come from organic social. And there's
like triple whale.
Yeah,
or
but you've got
something like
UTM
that.
links. But then Snowplow will take that UTM link, but it will also then, instead of doing a hot jar looking at the site and seeing the journey, it will allow that journey to be taken from where they've come from, where they've come from, and then look at how they behave on the site. And then we put that into our data. And then we look at the different journeys of different people, where they've come from and what those journeys are like. So it's incredibly good to then work out, if people come from this kind of journey, what's their AOV, what's their lifetime value, what's their compounded lifetime value, because they're all different metrics to look at.
Got you. So then you can see the performance of the channels.
Yeah. And you know where you might want to put more money into, or you know how you want to tweak things more. It just gives you more overview.
Next question I have for you is just around product validation pre-launch. So did you do any product validation before you launched, or because of your 20 plus years?
No, I do, because my product validation is, I know everyone else's products. So I then do my own products. I formulate them. You go back and forth with the lab because the formulation is not correct, and you keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking on, first of all, the formulation, the ingredients, the INCI list, and then on the color itself. So if you're doing makeup, that's how you do it. Skincare, it's just on the formulation. And then when I did the makeovers of those 500 women in the bathroom, we kept saying, what do you think? And look at your face, and does it feel different? And that's where we got the validation. And we got tremendous validation. And also that's when I knew, because we weren't at the stage, when you went back to your question of how did you know what to order the most of, is BFF, everyone was like, this is unbelievable. I've never felt this on my face like this before. This is like not wearing makeup, and my skin looks amazing and I look healthy and well. And I thought, I know that's going to sell well. I just, you get this kind of gut feeling of something.
Talk to me about the team. So you said you started with a small team. Now, a lot of the people that started with you are divisional heads. From a leadership standpoint, sometimes, there's great individual contributors. They're not the best leaders. Talk to me through that journey that you've been on.
Depends entirely on how much they are empowered and also how much they're mentored. And I think sometimes we've gone at a pace where it's so fast, they probably felt, am I being mentored enough? Am I learning enough? Or am I just expected to do my work and just get on with it? And I think when you have a company that's growing 300 or 400% a year, that's the hardest challenge you've got to face. So now we're at a stage we have 200 employees, and we look at the spread of the people, and we just done, in fact, now a survey on how you feel about working in the business, and doing that kind of internal facing survey. And we're doing a internal leadership thing right now of saying, we know how we want to appear as a company to the rest of the world. We know what we want to imbue in our followers and our customers. So let's take those principles and let's proactively now internalize them to the team, because some of them have been, we onboarded 65 people during COVID remotely. So that integration of people learning to work together as teams is key. But I think the people there's a balance in a startup that you have, when you have somebody who's come and they haven't had other work experience before, they have to learn on the job certain skill sets. but they know the product and the customer better than anyone nearly you'll bring in, because they've lived and breathed it, and that evolution of the customer, because customer evolves too. That core customer at the beginning may still be there at the end, but it's broadened that customer base, and they've grown with that, and they've seen that evolution. So there's a huge benefit, but that benefit stands well when they themselves feel they're growing, and that they're learning how to be a manager. So there are 2 people in the room now, you can ask them, who started as first job an intern, and now they both run teams.
So how about you? How do you continually develop as a CEO? Because it's a much different job when you're a startup to now
So
a
different.
scale up. Like how are you developing?
It's so different.
And it's tough.
Very tough.
Talk
so
us
going
through.
from being a founder to being a CEO, lots of founders don't make it to be a CEO. And in fact, they're thrown off their board and they become chairman, and a CEO is brought in by the next round. And also there's your choice of how much do you feel that you really want to still be ultimately in charge of the business. So for me, I still want to be ultimately in charge of the business. And until after the next round, I want to be in that position too. So maybe pre-exit or whatever we do, or pre-majority sale, I want to be there as a CEO. So what do I need to change in order to do that, in order for the company to grow the best it can without somebody else maybe more qualified as a CEO, but perhaps less qualified in the knowledge of what we are as a business come in? So about 6 months ago, a friend of mine who IPO'd a biotech company in America, who's a really smart woman and had a tremendous stress in her work, she went to an American company, and this guy had done the Harvard intervention program for 10 years. And he's an amazing CEO coach. So she said, it's really helped me to get a balance, to understand what proportion of my day is spent on strategy, how much I'm in the weeds, and how much I'm guiding. So I've started working with him the last month. And it's been such an eye-opener, because I love to be with people who I know much. I'm okay smart, but he's super smart, so it's so stimulating to being with somebody super smart. So very quickly, within an hour and a half, I thought he's great. And then I actually said, I want you to work with the whole C-suite, because I want us all to be getting what I'm getting. So they're all now slowly working with him, which is going to be good, because then we're going to have an offside in December and just bring that all together as a team. But for me, he said, what do you find easiest in your job? And what do you find hardest in your job? So I said, what I find easiest in my job is when I'm with our customer and follower, because I know her, I've known her for 30 years. So it's my biggest comfort zone. I know what she's going to think and what she's going to say. And and he said, well, how are you with them? And I said, well, I try and think, how can I empower them to be their best? How can I lift them up? How can I make them see the good in something when they feel bad about something? I guide them sometimes. Sometimes I'll have, not strong, tough words, but just think about this, kind of quite direct. And sometimes I'll be very careful and nurturing. But I'll try and I also am inspiring for them. And he said, well, that's what you need to bring to the C-suite, because that, that, and you're incredibly comfortable with that. And in the C-suite right now, some days I am inspiring, and some days I am incredibly strategic. But some days I'm so in the weeds. We have a new launch, and I'm like, why is that picture on the third page looking like that? It's like there are 20 people who can do that, but I go back to that. That's my baby, and that's where the founder does not become the CEO. So becoming the CEO is not worrying about that. There's a very funny, you get the things from the weirdest people. Barbara on Shark Tank.
Oh, yeah, we've interviewed her, yeah.
All right, so she's fantastic. So Barbara sits there in her she's just so funny, Barbara. And she goes, 80% is good enough. 80% is good enough. And what my 100% is to a consumer is probably 150%. So 80% actually, and when you're a founder at the very beginning, 80% isn't good enough, because you need to be 120% to get to the place. But I'm at the business now where 80% is good enough. And I can wake up a day and say it is good enough, so I don't need to send that email actually. So I'm still in that learning stage, but I'm really excited because I feel now maybe I can be that person. Whereas in the last few months, there's a lot on, I'm kind of running around the world. So, because I have 3 parts, I am running the business, I'm the face of the business, and I'm also the social media face of the business. And that stretches you quite a lot.
You talked about the hardest part you're working through with your coach. Can you share that?
I think it's understanding how other people are and understanding what makes them tick and getting that person to help me understand people better, who maybe I just find sometimes I just don't quite know how to work with them. So that's the hardest thing, because I just have to that's probably the hardest thing. But that's the thing I most want to get right as well. So, and also deciding, who are the right people to take the business forward? That's the hardest thing. When you look at your entire team and you think, who are those people who would take the business forward and who are those people who won't?
Holding people to account.
Holding people to account. There's certain areas of the business that have very clear KPIs, and certain businesses where KPIs are far harder to be very clear. So when teams are looking at other teams and some of them have very clear KPIs, and then they think, well, what's their accountability? So it's getting, I think, teams to understand there's different types of accountability for each team, and there's different ways each team will work. Fundamentally, ops work so differently from tech, which works differently from finance and new product development and marketing. They all have a different rhythm, but there needs to be that mutual respect for, are they working? Most people in a business just want to know everyone else is pulling their weight as equally as they are. And that's kind of one of the cool things for business working well, because then you're not kind of thinking, I'm pulling all-nighters, and they're just like, what are they doing? And sometimes that's from a lack of knowledge of another department's work. So it's also, we started to do these things on a Friday. We do this kind of like a town hall meeting, but it's been online. And so we now get a department to kind of present what they do, and they have questions at the end. And interestingly, most of them, there's a few questions at the end, but we did customer service. And they had so many questions from the team, all different members of the team, who just was fascinated to know what happens when this happens? What happens when this happens? And I thought, this is great. This is really great, because then they appreciate all those different things that customer service are dealing with.
Let's talk about personal brand. We'll switch gears and work towards wrapping up. So talk to me around the challenges starting a brand kind of around your personal brand, and what advice you would give to people around doing that, especially even if you think of wanting to build an asset that could one day be sold as well. Have you been how strategic have you been? Talk to us about that.
There's pluses and minuses about having your name above the door. So the plus is that it might open some doors. It might then make people more judging that you're going to be one specific thing when you could be being another, because you have a history of being one thing and your business is another. So that's a challenge in itself, which I've encountered a bit. But also the downside is that people might say at the very beginning, we need you there all the time. But there are a squillion examples of companies where that's not the case, from Bobby Brown to Laura Mercier to Charlotte Tilbury to Estee Lauder, lots of them. So I don't feel at all that that's an issue, because also in so many transactions today, the exit for the company might not be the exit for the founder. And there is that kind of, either you've got to you kind of got a rollout of your deal, or I think like Tilbury's case, she had a percentage of the new co with the people who bought it and bought everyone else out. So she's in that business doing stuff with the existing CEO, Dimitra, and just, that's the next evolution of the business. So actually there's many examples where that I do not worry about. But I would worry, my biggest worry would be that when I find somebody who ultimately might take the business to that next level, that they would do it responsibly in the way that I would love the company to be totally, totally global.
And I know, look, I'd love to talk about as well your connection that you've built with your community, Trinny Tribes. Tell us about that and what advice you would give to people around cultivating, community and just building relationships at scale, because that's really what it's all about.
It is exactly that.
Yeah.
There's different communities we've seen. We've seen the Glossier community, it's the Glass Emily Weiss, and then came Glossier. So I think communities have been manufacturers by some brands, and I think those perhaps ultimately are the least successful because they just are living on quicksand. Ours was started by a woman in Northwest England called Kelly, and she followed the brand, me, on Facebook, and she started a little fan page. And then that grew, and then we had a few of them. And then we saw they were there, and they all had different, one had taken my face, another a bit of yellow. You know, they'd screen grab bits of what they felt was us. And then we sort of then said, well, look, would you like to, you know, come together, this Trinny tribe that they sort of called themselves. And you've got admins of the page. We could call you ambassadors. And we could also, when we have a new launch, we would send it just, you know, to the ambassadors. So you can feel that you have a bit more awareness than that community that you're building. But there's never money that exchanges hands. There's never promos that exchange hands. There's never commercialization. And I think the true beauty of our community is that there's a passion, and we inspire a passion for them to make the most themselves. But that community itself fosters, you know, lifting up women. So during COVID, we had an explosion of the community. And I would sometimes say on, you know, the Trinny tribe in Germany is now 300 people. If you want to meet a group of women where, you know, you can decide the woman that you want to be today, not who your father, brother, daughter, mother, aunt, sister, best friend thinks you should be. That was, at that time, that message was incredibly relevant because most women were sitting in that household, juggling 5 roles and having no time for themselves and feeling so stretched. And that resonated. So they joined their local tribe. We now have them in 33 tribes around the world in 16 countries. Of women where I think New South Wales is. I don't know how many New South Wales is, but I think that's about 5,000 or something. Yeah, and so we have about 10,000 in Australia.
And how do you constantly build that community and ensure it thrives? And
it's about that it's never a one-way street. You know, Instagram is a one-way street. It's a fan page. It's like people leave comments and stuff. And Facebook is a two-way community because you can upload, you can, you know, put your contribution in, you can get a response. So it's a perfect environment for building a community. And they all feel heard because we have Paris, who's one of the early people who does Trinny London, runs a team now of 12, I think, 12. And they answer 11,000 comments a week. So we, you know, when you look at scaling that, you look at what you outsource and what you scale and what is really important to keep in-house, it's something like that, because that is our heartbeat of how our follower and our customers feeling. When something comes out about a product, it's like they're our biggest advocate and our biggest critic. So we know quite quickly if something is happening that we need to look at. We know if something is resonating immediately. We know the zeitgeist of how they're feeling around political things. If we want to put up a meme, you know, we can kind of get a sense of, we won't make a huge error of judgment, you know, around something. And so, and some of the people in that team have moved to other parts of our companies. So if your first intro to Trinny London is in that community, you know our following customers so well. So when you go to another team, you take that knowledge with you to whatever you're doing. So it's like this fantastic knowledge center for our customer and our follower.
yeah, and I suppose you guys must use that as incredible insight for next lines of product and all sorts of things. Like,
we do it in a way that I think I've spent the last 5 years developing what I think women will want and maybe didn't realize they needed. So, you know, we did makeup for 4 and a bit years. We launched skincare in February, and they had said, I hope you're doing skincare, but they had no idea what was coming because that was all what I felt I wanted to give them, that I felt they would really need and understand a routine and understand about ingredients and etc. And that's 30% of our business now in revenue in 6 months.
yeah,
So that kind of, we now are looking at how we grow skincare. And I was in the lab and we came up with sort of 20 new concepts. So I thought, okay, this is the first time I'd ever done it. And I just said, I'm in, you know, here looking at all these things. And I'm not going to tell you what any of them are, but I want you to just quickly, I did it on Instagram, let me know what you would like next. And we had 2,500 comments in like a few minutes. So we then put them in, you know, some like 9 people wanted deodorant. But what was interesting is that of those people, there were some big ones. And those big ones were maybe number 6 on what I was doing next. And I thought, I'm going to put that number 1 now. because I know that appetite for that is huge.
We have to work towards wrapping up. I just want to go deeper because that level of cultivation of community, I think there's something that people can really learn from you. What advice would you give to really cultivate just such a deep connection with your tribe and really foster that? So, you get that many comments in that period of time. Is it because you've been on TV for so long? Like it was like...
I don't, because like when I was on TV, then I was off TV for a few years and I had a 16,000 on Instagram. I wasn't like this kind of, whatever, the kind of social media person that it came from that. But it's the fact that whenever somebody leaves a comment, we like it or we respond back. So people feel they're heard. And when you're a community and you follow something, like if you follow somebody in music, you kind of, the idea that you might get results will be minimal because there'll be 28 million comments on Ariana Grande's, 200 million Instagram account. So that scale doesn't work for us, okay? But when you're at a few million, it can work. And it's that fact that, on DMs, so on normal ones, we respond to everything, but DMs, you have primary, general, and then you have what I call the dark hole requests, okay? So primary, I will do myself. And secondary, I'll do myself. I won't do Facebook directly. The team does that, but I'll scroll through the answers because occasionally I go down the weeds and I want to check they're the right answers. In the requests, I will kind of literally randomly close my eyes, click on one. I won't look, they have that many followers. I just won't give a shit. And I think there's something in the zeitgeist about that. So they might have 20 followers, but on just every, 100, I'll just scroll and then click. And then I'll respond and unblock them and put them into general. And just out of the blue, they get this message and a response. And that's incredibly powerful because they're heard and people need to be heard.
Yeah, but as a CEO of a 200-person company, is that the best use of your time?
Okay, let me throw this one back at you. A guy started a competitor to British Gas, the most successful energy company in England. And his desk is in customer service. And he's a CEO and he's a seasoned CEO. And I sat at a breakfast with him once of CEOs and he said, the most important thing I can do for the business is to know exactly what our customers want because it reflects every single thing we do.
There you go. All right, we're going to move to the hot seat round. Rapid fire question and answer. How do you define success?
Having the freedom to do what you have a passion for and to have many people buy into that passion.
Who's your favorite style icon in history?
Iris Apfel.
If you could have dinner with any entrepreneur, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Might be like Rockefeller. That original baron, I was looking at the original kind of people who made America and just like turned things around on every situation to think of a new way to deal with something.
What's the one thing entrepreneurs need to be successful?
Never giving up.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much, Trinny. This has been a ton of fun. Congratulations on all your success, and I'm looking forward to continuing to follow the journey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, if you love this episode, make sure to check out this interview with Scooter Braun on how he identifies talent that could go on to find wild success like Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande.
Justin Bieber was the most talented, gifted kid I'd ever met. It was so insane how great of a singer he was, how soulful he was, what he could do on the drums naturally, taught himself with guitar, drums. Like, he was a phenomenon. And we met at the perfect time in both of our lives.